All right, y'all, let's go, man. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. What time is it? It's not even noon yet. It's Saturday, the 15th, March 2025. A bird just landed right there on the telephone wire. Let me issue my disclaimer. The podcast was sold. My son, Sean Xavier Gumby Jr., myself, Sean Xavier Gumby Sr., Stigmatism in My Soul and Gumby Publishing. We do not wish to defame, slander, libel, or hurt or defame anybody as it relates to what we're going to talk about today and what I have been talking about, which is the United States of America versus Dion Gatling, also known as Cuff. Shout out to Cuff. We're going to be coming from today, October 21st, 2016. Volume 5, the redacted transcript of the Franks hearing. All right, y'all. So, this case, man, is so emotional, man. It's just, Anyway, let's get into it. So, Keith Cromer is on the stand. He's being cross-examined by Stephen Welby, which is the attorney for Lorenzo Gibbs. And Stephen Welby is a very, very sharp attorney. Very sharp. I don't have no coffee here today. I just had one cup so far. I drink a lot of coffee every day. But I don't have a cup here today, so we're going to do this without the coffee. So Stephen Welby is a very sharp attorney, and he's got Cromer on the stand. Cromer is under oath, and they begin to talk about, amongst other things, I'm going to come off the top of the dome first. That's a little Sean waking up. I'm going to come off the top of the dome first with what I read. So today I read from, this is a 158-page document. I read from page 56 to 126. So I read 70 pages. Word for word, line for line. So I'm gonna come off the top of the dome first with what I read. We're not gonna get to all of it, but we're gonna get to most of it. So right off the bat, they're done. Welby is drilling Keith Cromer about the $2,500 a month payments and why is she being paid, why is Tammy Cowins being paid $2,500 a month. Stephen Welby is trying to make the point that, the payments aren't justified, right? He's looking at it from a context that there has to be something happening, an event, a buy and bust. She has to be videotaped or seen handing a drug dealer some money and the drug dealer handing her some drugs. Bang, they got that on video. That warrants a $2,500 a month payment. That's his level of thinking, and that's what he's trying to impress upon the judge. But Cromer pushes back against that theory and says from a DEA perspective, it doesn't really work that way because in the DEA, they work long-term investigations. There are no buy and busts, and if there are any buy and busts, it's at the end after they've done long-term investigation. And there will be lulls in the investigation. There will be times, days, weeks, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks where there is no action other than maybe phone calls. There will be no real actionable intelligence or information gained, but because that is the case for a particular month or 2 week or 3 week period, that doesn't mean that you don't pay the DEA informant, right? Because this is a long-term investigation. And conversely, on the flip side of that coin, if there's a month where there's a lot of activity, a lot of phone calls, a lot of actionable information given, you don't overpay the agent, you know. But the fact that these are long-term investigations means that you continue to pay the informant, and when you fill out the form, the DEA 6 or whatever form you have to fill out in order to support the payment, you just write on the bottom, what did he say? Ongoing investigation, right? Whereas if there was something that was real specific in the subject line or the information line, you would write whatever specific thing it was, met with cartel member or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But if none of that happens, if it's a slow moment, slow month, slow couple weeks, you just write ongoing investigation. And all of his payments that he made to Tammy Cowins were signed off by him, were properly documented by him. Everything was straight up and down like 6 o'clock, above board, and even approved by Cromer's supervisor. So they get into that. Then Cromer comes out on the stand and says that before Jack Harvey retired, Tammy Cowins was already providing information on Cuff and Suarez, okay? And when he got wind of that, he took the telephone number. Tammy Cowins had Cuffy's number and she had Fidel Suarez's number. Cromer says he took those numbers, he inputted them into the DEA database, and nothing came back for Cuffy. But a hit, you know, woke up, man? A hit came back for Fidel. And at that point, all Cromer knew was the name Fidel. Did not know his full name, and all he knew was the nickname Cuff. And this is all brought to him by Tammy Cowins. So when he gets the hit, when he puts Fidel's number, he puts both numbers in the database, he gets a hit back on Fidel's number, he picks up the phone and calls one of his DEA colleagues, a buddy out in DEA Los Angeles, and says, yo, check this out for me. So the DEA, the Los Angeles DEA nigga, hits him back and explains to him Fidel just got out of prison. There's already an active investigation going on with him. So they kind of left it at that, and Cromer says, yo, if you hear of anything about him anywhere in the Atlanta field division, let me know. And that goes on with that. So after that, now Welby starts grilling Keith Cromer about his relationship with Tammy Cowins, his relationship with her as a controlling agent, as a friend, personal friend, and as a alleged lover. Keith Cromer never admits to having sex with her. He never admits to that. And he told me that. And for all of y'all that keep asking me, am I going to upload the conversation I had with Keith Cromer on the phone, the answer is no, because he asked me not to. And integrity is in full effect, and it never went out of style. I told that man I wouldn't do it, so I'm not going to do it. And Welby begins to ask him about certain events, right? So, uh, what's sad about this thing is that Keith Cromer had a terminally ill son um, who died at the age of 12, I think, from leukemia. And this happens right around the time Jack Harvey retires. He has to take 6 weeks off to get himself straight for grief. And, you know, when he comes back to work after 6 weeks, you know, he's hit with all this information about Cuffy and Suarez. And Keith Cromer goes to EAP at the DEA, Employee Assistance Program, which is a function inside human resources that helps company employees if you are dealing with depression or gambling or drug addiction or alcoholism or grief or loss. You were supposed to be able to go to these people as a part of your employ, where you're employed, and get some counseling, therapy or whatever the case may be, whatever you call it. And he chooses to do that with him, his wife, and his other son. Come to find out, the employees inside the EAP tell Keith Cromer's supervisor that he's coming to EAP for therapy and counseling, which is against the rules, because I'm pretty sure that that specific function of a company should be confidential, but they don't keep his in confidence. They tell his supervisor. He finds out about it. He stops going. And, he begins to talk to Tammy Cowins about his loss. And she tells him about her loss of her husband, right? Now, this is right then and there, he has violated DEA policy in terms of dealing with informants. There should be nothing personal discussed between a controlling agent and an informant. So just the fact that he's talking to her about personal issues is out of bounds. Now, this is the crazy part, right? And I, after talking to Keith Cromer on the phone, like I say, first, the way it was the first introduction that I had of Keith Cromer was in a very, very negative light, which was by people that were telling me about the case, and the description of Keith Cromer was always, this crooked ass DEA agent, you understand? This rogue, very negative slant on him. And because I allowed myself to be influenced by what other people's perception of another man was, I adopted that same perception of this man. Until I called him on the phone and he answered the phone and me and him talked for an hour and a half. Right? So now that made him a real person to me. And I called him another time after that and we spoke for about an hour. So I spoke to him on the phone for about 2.5 hours between two conversations. And I was shocked that he would even get on the phone with me after I told him what I was doing. I told him, I said, yo, I'm a YouTuber, man. I'm doing, my man got the dope dog. My man walking his dog right there. Got the dope dog. He got one of them cocky bulldogs, the little small joints. After I told him what I was doing, I said, I'm covering the case, man. And I was shocked. I was expecting him to say, man, I don't want to talk to you. Get out of here. Click. But he stayed on the phone. And that was impressive to me because usually somebody who is cloaked in shame, disgraced, embarrassed, would try to avoid any kind of um, conversation about whatever thing that they went through that caused them that situation. But he rocked with me, and that made me see him in a different way. And he talked to me from the standpoint that he had a side to tell that nobody heard, that everybody had only heard the side that I heard, that he was some piece of shit DA agent that got involved sexually with a informant and blew the case. He talked to me like, Sean, I got my side to the story. You need to hear my side, and it's totally different from what you've heard or what they're saying about me. So, I got a respect for the man, right? I don't disrespect him because he made a mistake, because I made mistakes. You done made mistakes. All 8 billion people on the planet have made mistakes. And we're going to keep making mistakes until they put us in the ground. The only time you can worry about not making any more mistakes is when you're dead and gone. But while you're alive and moving around, you're going to make mistakes. So, I get back to this. So, he's talking to Tammy Cowins about, his loss and whatnot. And come to find out, this is the crazy part. When Keith Cromer's son passes, Keith Cromer's brother is charged with putting the obituary together. Keith Cromer tells his brother to make the obituary, right? And sends his brother a whole bunch of family pictures so that he can make this obituary for his nephew, Keith Cromer's son. This is Keith Cromer's younger brother by 20 years. Come to find out, Keith Cromer's younger brother is dating a girl that lives next door to Tammy Cowins. This is in here. This is the actual court documents. Tammy Cowins befriends Keith Cromer's brother. And Keith Cromer's brother uses Tammy Cowins' computer to do the PowerPoint presentation to make the obituary. Keith Cromer's brother uses PowerPoint on Tammy Cowins' computer to make the obituary. I want to speculate just like you. I know your mind is running all over the place just like mine did. That's the first instance. The next instance is Keith Cromer. At this point, Keith Cromer is going through massive grief, massive depression. He's devastated by the loss of his son. And his brother is driving him around. The way it's explained in here, Cromer says that, he's already a bad driver and he just was a wreck after his son was passed. He was an emotional wreck, a mental wreck. So his brother is acting as a driver for him. So Keith Cromer ends up at this restaurant eating, and his brother calls and Keith Cromer says, yo, come on up and get something to eat with me, chill with me. So I think at that time, Keith Cromer's brother was on the phone with, I think it was with Tammy. It's in here. So the brother comes up to eat, and then right after the brother comes into the restaurant to sit down and eat with Keith, Tammy Cowins walks in the restaurant and sits down and eats with them. That's the first instance. Another instance, and Keith Cromer pays for everybody, right? Another instance, detailed in the court documents, Keith Cromer is at the movies watching the Three Stooges. He's a Three Stooges fan. And his brother calls, or he calls his brother, says, yo, come chill at the movie with me. His brother said, all right. So Keith Cromer's chilling at the movie watching. His brother walks in, sits behind him with Tammy Cowins. Tammy Cowins comes in with her and some family members. But I wonder if those family members would have been, was she setting him up then? She might have been setting them up then, these family members. That's what it says in the paperwork. So Tammy Cowins walks into the movies after his brother gets there. Her and some other people that in the paperwork is described as family members. So Keith Cromer gets up and walks out. He's seen enough, he gets up and walks out. And I think there was another instance where Keith Cromer was out and his brother showed up, and right after his brother shows up, Tammy Cowins shows up, and at this point he tells his brother, said, look, you know, when I invite you, I'm just inviting you. I'm not inviting nobody else because I gotta pay for everybody. And then he says, Keith Cromer says he told Tammy Cowins that. Then there was another trip to Biloxi, Mississippi. Keith Cromer plans a trip to go to Biloxi, Mississippi that he does every year with him and his college roommate, his college buddy. So he plans a trip to go to Biloxi, Mississippi. Keith Cromer, his college buddy, and Keith Cromer's brother. All three of them are gonna go. He buys they rent the hotel. He buys the plane tickets. His brother backs out. His brother backs out. How does it go? When he shows up at the airport, Tammy Cowins is at the airport. And they go to Biloxi, Mississippi, and they got 2 hotel rooms. So Cromer, the way he explains it, was like, yo, the rooms were already paid. Him and his college roommate slept in one room, and she slept in the other room that he paid for. Then there was another trip. What was the other trip to? I think it was up in Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Tammy Cowins ends up going on that trip. His buddy was gonna rent a house. His buddy gets burned, has to go to the hospital. So with them renting a house with Cromer and all his college buddies, the one dude gets burned, has to go to the hospital. So the house rental falls apart, and he ends up renting some hotel rooms, and his buddy ends up spending time with Tammy Cowins, according to the court documents. But it's kind of beyond coincidental that this woman is showing up, just showing up every time that he's getting ready to go somewhere on some trip, or he's out to eat or whatever. But I'm just going on his testimony. He is under oath, and this is where we're at. So let's. What else do I want to say? Anything else? Let's get into it. All right. So right here on page 56, Welby asks Cromer if she didn't have page 56, line 10. So if she didn't ever go pick up money or ever go pick up drugs, she'd still get the $2,500. Yes or no? Cromer: no. Again, it goes to, and I might as well go ahead. With this investigation right here, okay, when Tammy Cowins, in July of 2011, Tammy Cowins was providing information relative to individuals who were associated with, I don't recognize the gentleman here, but I recognize the name, with the guy named Cuff, okay? Don't know who he is, don't know anything. Never even heard of him myself. And none of the guys in my group have ever heard of this person. Tammy Cowins provided the information relative that she received from other individuals who were in the know about drug trafficking, particularly a gentleman who was a Mexican national who had an agreement with Cuff through a third person to begin to work together to distribute drugs between California. And she identified this Cuff person being here in the St. Louis area. And when the distribution of drugs occurred, then they would pay her a portion. They would pay Tammy Cowins a portion of the drug proceeds as a finder's fee for the person who wound up putting those two individuals together, which we all know is Big Meech. So Tammy Cowins was receiving a finder's fee for all of the drug transactions between Suarez and Cuffy, on top of getting paid by the DEA. And we know from past testimony and questioning that I think in the second, early in this, they asked, does Big Meech get a cut of the proceeds of the drug transactions? Meaning, the finder's fee for Tammy Cowins, was it really for Big Meech, right? Then they go on to say Tammy Cowins, she was using her database at her job. I think she worked for a company that was doing some work for Goldman Sachs, or she might have even worked for Goldman Sachs. She was going into the database, finding motherfuckers and reporting them to the DEA, right? So what she was doing, she was targeting, let me read it to you. Now, that moving forward has the potential, as it says, to do what we are looking for, okay? Initially, things were brought to us by Tammy Cowins, some nationals from, I don't know if they are from Pakistan or somewhere in the Middle East, who they believe were laundering money. So my group didn't specialize in and really had no knowledge of laundering money. So I spoke with the supervisor of the money laundering group, and I had them speak to Tammy about what they believed was money laundering aspect of what was going on. From that, and based upon those conversations, it was recommended that Tammy Cowins speak to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. There were other individuals based on Tammy Cowins having access to certain financial databases, that Tammy Cowins was identifying individuals from that database for agents to take a look at. Welby, are you aware that she received? When did she tell you about this Cuff fellow that you just mentioned, Cromer? Again, it was after I returned back to work. It was after October of 2011. So we called Tammy Cowins. We got the number for this guy, Fidel. That's all she knew him as, Fidel. And that's all she knew the other person as far as Cuff. Asked for the numbers, and I ran them in the DEA database. There was a hit that came up on an investigation that was happening in Los Angeles. An investigation that was identified in Los Angeles, California with that particular number. Welby, which number? Cromer, Fidel's number, who was later identified as Fidel Suarez, if I'm not mistaken. From there, I wound up calling someone I knew, a friend of mine who worked for DEA in Los Angeles. And from there, I explained to him how I received the information, how Tammy Cowins provided the information to us. And he identified Fidel fully as Fidel Suarez. He had been in prison, but was released. So then they talk about, Keith Cromer puts all of this in the DEA database and tells the dude, yo, you ever hear about him being in Atlanta? Let us know. But LA has got it. You guys are working it. So there's no need for DEA Atlanta to do anything about it because y'all already working it out there in LA. When she gave you the information on Cuff, did you do the same thing? We didn't have anything to go on him for Cuff. Welby, you had his phone number. Cromer. Whatever phone number at that time that was provided, there was no information. So the only thing we knew about him is he was from St. Louis and a nickname Cuff. And I wasn't going to have them go try to search down something because the more viable person out of the two, meaning Fidel and Cuffy, as far as how I looked at it, was Fidel, because he was dealing directly with the source of a supply in a source country. Welby, so Cuff wasn't that important to you, Keith Cromer? Not to me, no sir. So like he said, he really only dealt with mid-level to upper-level drug traffickers that had ties to source countries. So Fidel fit that description. Now, mind you, he doesn't know anything about these people until Tammy Cowins tells him about it. Stephen Welby, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but did your relationship with Tammy Cowins change after the passing of your son, Keith Cromer? Yes, sir. Welby, did she send flowers to the funeral home? Keith Cromer, I didn't know about that until later. I didn't know that. My wife sent a thank you card to everyone who sent gifts or cards, and when I looked at the list of people she sent things to, Yes, she was on the list. I don't know what she sent at all. I just know she was on the list when my wife sent something that said thank you, a thank you note. Stephen Welby, were you moved by that? I was moved by what? Stephen Welby, the fact that she had shown some sympathy at the time of your loss. Keith Cromer, sir, I didn't know she sent anything. I was devastated as a human being just for the loss period by itself, you know? So that's what that was. And did you share, Welby, and did she share with you that she had recently gone through a similar tragedy in her own life with her husband's passing? Keith Cromer, yes, eventually, yes, sir. Welby, and the two of you became closer after that? Is that true? Keith Cromer, we had interaction, yes, sir. You began to discuss the personal matters with the confidential source. Keith Cromer, yes, sir. You would see her outside of work business. Keith Cromer, yes. Movies, dinner, things like that. Keith Cromer, no movies. Welby, just dinner? It's in context of, let me explain this to you, okay? Jack Welby says, go ahead. As far as the dinner is concerned, okay, one thing, and I'm sure you have to know this now, divine intervention goes here. When my son passed away, before my son passed away, I didn't discuss anything. The only thing anybody knew, except the people who were close to me in my group, knew that just my son was sick. Not that he was terminally ill and dying. I never discussed that with her or anyone. And it goes back to the flowers. One thing that happened that I didn't know, and it wasn't until months later, after my son passed away, that she knew my youngest brother. He doesn't know anything about her, but my brother helped put up the program together for my son's service. And my brother only knows her because he was dating the young lady next door. He has nothing to do with any criminal activity or anything. He's just dating the next door neighbor's daughter. And he was getting the PowerPoint collage together for my son's service. We sent him the photos we wanted for the service, and he utilized Tammy Cowins' computer to put the PowerPoint presentation together. And Tammy Cowins at that point saw me and my children on those photos and never mentioned it to me at all for months after that happened. Stephen Welby. And am I correct that you were grateful for her for allowing your brother to use the computer to prepare the PowerPoint for your son's service? Are you saying that? Keith Cromer. I didn't even know, period. My son passed away September 23rd, 2011. I didn't even know my brother even knew her until December 2011. So how can I be appreciative of anything I don't know? She didn't help my brother with the PowerPoint at all. He just utilized the computer. That's it. Flowers, I didn't know she sent flowers. The only thing I knew was that my wife sent a thank you note to everyone who sent some token of sympathy, either a card or flower. So anyone who left electronically or physically at the funeral home, we wound up getting a list of everyone, and we sent thank you notes to everyone. So that's where we at. Y'all with me? Keith Cromer. Initially, when my son passed away, I spoke with the people at the Employee Assistance Program. Me, my wife, and my other two remaining children spoke with the EAP program. And for whatever reason, that person in the EAP program told the front office and my boss that we were going to see them. I don't know why, and so I decided not to go. I ended that. And after a little while longer in my grief and stuff, and like I described to you, one day I wound up speaking to Tammy Cowins. Welby, and your relationship grew closer after you began speaking to her about your feelings. Keith Cromer. We had, yes, sir. Welby, it became a more personal relationship. Keith Cromer. Yes, sir. Welby, and you will go out to dinner together, go get drinks, things like that. Keith Cromer. Okay, going out to dinner. Here was the second part. Let's go over this. Because my brother was my, at the end of the day, no movies, but we would be out at the same location. And I have to qualify this and tell you this. My brother, I couldn't really function driving or anything, so my brother drove me around. He took me where I wanted to go, or he would meet me. And we would have, because my brother is 20 years younger than me. And I just wanted someone to be there with me, and he would. We would sit there and talk, and that's what would happen. Now, one day, and I have to, so I can describe it so you can understand, in December of 2011, my son, my brother, and I were eating at a restaurant not far from my parents' house. And he was on the phone speaking with someone. My brother was on the phone speaking with someone. And he told them that I'm eating with my brother and my nephew. And about 30 minutes after that telephone call, she shows up there. Tammy Cowins shows up there. Now, going back to another time, I would be out with my brother. I could be finished. We were running an errand. We were doing something. And I would say, hey, meet me somewhere. He would meet. But at the same time, my brother was in communication with Tammy Cowins saying, I'm going to meet my brother at a restaurant. He's there. He just told me to come up there. You know, I'm paying for his meal for coming. I guess I'm paying for the company. And she would come. Welby, and you would pay for her meal as well? Keith Cromer, yeah, I'm stuck. I got both of them there. I was paying for his. That would happen, yes, sir. I would pay for the meal. So, like, what's up, man? You need me?
No, I'm just listening to the thing.
You want to come say what's up to the people? You picked your hair?
I picked it, but it's all wet, so it's just gonna fly back down.
So, it's either I don't know what to think, y'all. What do you think? What do you think? Why is Keith Cromer's brother on the phone with Tammy Cowins so much? Why? Why? Is it set up that way that Keith Cromer is really involved with this woman the way it's been alleged through the years, romantically and sexually, and he's using his brother as the buffer, his brother's phone number as the buffer between him and her, so that there's not so much phone calls between his phone and her phone? But then why would he need to do that if he's always in constant contact with her anyway, because she's a confidential informant, so he's always in contact with her. So would he need to really do that? But keeping with that same speculation, is he using his brother? Has he told his brother, like, yo, you know, I'm hitting this, I'm knocking this down or whatever, but I need you to facilitate this thing so that I keep some distance between me and her? Is that a scenario? Or is the feds trying to set up Keith Cromer. Is Tammy Cowins playing, is she a double spy? I don't know. You said, Welby, you said there were no movies that you were at together. In fact, did you see a movie, The Three Stooges, and she also happened to be there at the same time? Keith Cromer. I'll tell you this. I'm at the movies by myself, and that was in April of 2012. And growing up, I loved The Three Stooges. The movie came out. I'm sitting in the movies. I called my brother. I said, hey, I'm at the movies. I paid for his ticket. Just come in. About 30 minutes, he arrives. He sits behind me. And behind him walks in Tammy Cowins and two of her family members. About that time, I saw the movie enough that I didn't like it, and I told him, hey, call me later, and I get up and I leave. So the reason you left is because you didn't like the movie. It wasn't because Tammy Cowins showed up. That's what Welby asked him. Keith Cromer. Well, we had a conversation about that as far as I asked you to come somewhere to meet me. I don't want to have to pay. I don't want to have to deal with that. I'm asking you to come, not anybody else. Welby, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't understand. Keith Cromer. In speaking to my brother, I said, if I ask you to come somewhere, I'm asking you. Anybody else come, that's money out of my pocket, and I don't want to do that. So that was, and I had the same conversation with Tammy Cowins as well. So before August of 2012, your relationship had developed beyond merely work with Tammy Cowins. Keith Cromer, yes. It had become personal. Keith Cromer, yes. Welby, did it become intimate or romantic? No, sir. Keith Cromer. At some point prior to August 28, 2012, Keith Cromer, no, sir. Did it become sexual prior to August 28, 2012? No, sir. Did it ever become sexual? Welby asked him. Keith Cromer, no. No. I'm going to go ahead and say this, and I don't want to, but my son passed away September 23rd of 2011. I haven't, since November of 2011, had an intimate sexual relationship since then to today, because dealing with emotional, personal issues, and I'm still trying to work through. So the date of this is October 21st, 2016. Wow. I haven't since November of 2011 had an intimate sexual relationship since then to today. So he hadn't had sex for over 5 years. 5 years and 1 month. Because I have personal issues I'm still trying to work through. Welby, did you ever take any trips together with Tammy Cowins that was not directly related to business of the DEA? Keith Cromer, yes, sir. Welby, how many? Keith Cromer, 2. Welby, where did you go? Keith Cromer, the first one, my college roommate and I and my brother had planned a trip to go to Biloxi, Mississippi, sometime the 1st of 2012. My college roommate and I, we take a trip together every year or every other year, and I asked my brother to go as far as to show my appreciation for all that he had done for me since my son passing. And so we made our travel arrangements and everything. Unfortunately, something happened with my brother. He couldn't go. But beforehand, and let me back that up. Before he had told Tammy Cowins we were going and that I was going, we were going to fly. Tammy Cowins tried to convince him that they wanted to go, and to have my brother drive with Tammy Cowins there. And he told me about it, and I said no. So here again, Tammy Cowins finds out about this trip to Biloxi, Mississippi through Keith Cromer's brother. My brother couldn't go for other reasons. My roommate and I had already sent my brother the itinerary because I paid for the plane tickets for my college roommate and myself. I paid for the plane tickets. I made the travel arrangements for both of us. And the day we were leaving to get to the airport, we get to the airport and Tammy Cowins is at the airport as well. Stephen Welby, she just happened to be there? Keith Cromer, no. They had gotten the itinerary and they went. And I said, and I'll be perfectly candid, the conversation talks I had and my college roommate, he just said, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Because he doesn't know anything about what their status or anything is. So he said, don't even worry about it. So we had 2 rooms at the place where we went. Me and him bunked up in a room and she had her room by herself. Welby, a room that you paid for. Keith Cromer, yes. Welby, on a personal trip to Biloxi. Keith Cromer, yes. And you said your buddy didn't know that there would be anything improper about Tammy Cowins going on a personal trip with you to Biloxi. Keith Cromer, he didn't. He hadn't met her. He had met her himself. Welby, but you knew it was against DEA regulations to go on a personal trip. Keith Cromer, I did. Welby, with a confidential source? I did. And you knew it was wrong? Yes, sir. And you did it anyway. For that trip, I was on the plane and we were going already, so I went. Welby, how did she end up sleeping in the room that you paid for? How did Tammy Cowins end up sleeping in the room that you had paid for? You said Tammy Cowins in Biloxi, Mississippi slept in a room that you paid for. Keith Cromer, correct. How did that happen? Keith Cromer, because we had 2 rooms. I had 1 room and my roommate we had a room. We were going to be in separate rooms because only he and I were going on the trip once my brother canceled. Didn't factor in that somebody else was going on that trip. So once I realized they were going, I said, you know what? We already got 2 rooms paid for. They took that room and my roommate and I stayed in the other room together. Welby, so you gave her permission to stay in the room that you had paid for, right? Keith Cromer, yes. Tell me about the second trip. Here's the second trip. I was leaving and the guys and I went to college with, there were 2 things. It was for the alumni. We had raised $50,000 for an endowment at the university that we went to for undergrad. And there was a convention in Chattanooga, Tennessee. My roommate, same person who went to Biloxi, we were going to stay at, we had rented hotel rooms at a hotel. But one of our friends we went to school with wound up renting a house. So we were canceling out our rooms while we're going up there, but unfortunately he got burned seriously and was in the hospital. Tammy Cowins had talked to my college roommate and said at that time, I wasn't even really talking to Tammy Cowins, as far as on a regular basis. And Tammy Cowins had spoken to my roommate and said, hey, I don't even have to deal or talk to Keith. Me and you could just hang out, meaning Tammy Cowins and his roommate. He and her. And he said, fine. And that's how he left it. He said, you know what? This is the last time we all have an opportunity to see each other, and so this is it. And so CS1, Tammy Cowins went on the trip, and we got up there, and she interacted with my roommate. So you stayed in the hotel together? Jack Welby, Stephen Welby, Keith Cromer. Yes, Stephen Welby. And when was that? Do you remember the dates approximately when your friend got burned? It was March of 2014. Welby, and tell me about the trip that you went to Biloxi. Do you remember the date of that trip? Keith Cromer, that was sometime in 2012, February and March. Welby, you said your relationship with Tammy Cowins was personal but never intimate. No kissing, hugging, nothing like that? Keith Cromer, no sir. I'm gonna stop right there, y'all. I'm gonna stop right there. We'll do the rest another time. Because now they're gonna switch gears and go into the affidavit and all of that. Follow me on Spotify. The podcast was sold on Spotify. Follow me on Instagram. The podcast was sold on Instagram. Peace.